Good morning, everyone. I hope you are comfortable. And thank you for inviting me to the festival. And thank you for sharing this moment. I am a rector at the Oslo School of Architecture and Design, and I have been so for 5.5 years. I haven't worked with Snøhetta for more than since I started as a rector. But I will show you projects from my time at Snøhetta and also some projects after I left Snøhetta. I'm still a partner with them, so I know them quite well. I think the topic is a very interesting one because landmark architecture can be both. It can be good and it can be bad. And I'm looking forward to the discussion about it because I think you can ask the question. Maybe I can get some help from you before I continue. Can you move there? Oh, we can't see. Okay, sure. What is a landmark? I can continue while you are doing this. Because we have a lot of landmarks. And I also think that we could just go through, like nearly everything is a landmark. And we find them all over the place. You know, there is, that's better. Thank you. Now I can see what is coming. And I was just Googling, like we do these days, and you get all of these fantastic historic buildings, and it's all over the world. And you find them like large, really complex buildings. You find them like landmarks like this, typically more modern landmarks, old famous landmarks. I hope you have been there. And also landmarks which don't have that sort of building function, but still are a landmark. And it goes on and on and on. And many things, I'm sure that you know most of these buildings, but maybe not all of them, but they are still landmarks, considered a landmark. And why are they considered like landmarks? I think talking about Google, if you Google iconic buildings, you get even more landmark buildings, like this one, or this one, or this one, or even this one, and this one. And I think if you try to define a landmark building or an iconic building, it's something which is easily to understand, and it's a monument, it's a building, or a structure. It can be many things. And I think looking at the quick click that I just did, it's all over the world. And I could also fill in mountains here because mountains are also landmarks, but not buildings. And I will concentrate on buildings. So there's this connection between the building with humans and nature, and especially me coming from Norway, nature is a very important part of landmarks. Again, I just read that Merriam-Webster defined landmark buildings as 3 things. And I think it's also interesting to say that it could also be connected to an important occasion or important memory or time in history. So it could be also an achievement. I will just give you some of the landmark buildings, iconic buildings that I have been part of. And the first one and the first project of all in Snøhetta was the competition about the library in Alexandria. And it was truly meant to be a landmark, and it was a landmark before it was a building. I mean, this institution was talked about without being a building. But we were given the opportunity to make the building for this function and this iconic thing. I will show you a quick video of the thing, if I can make it work. With some sound. Different sound.
Technical issues. Just a second.
Try it again. Thank you. It's from the very start, this building was meant to be a landmark. It was meant to be iconic. The whole competition was focused on having a landmark building. If it's successful or not depends on how we want to define that. Because in the beginning, when the program was issued, it should be not a public library, it should not be a public plaza, and it should not be open for everyone. We are very happy that we were able to convince the client that it should be a public plaza. And also because the most iconic building in this picture is a quite not so likable building in the back. which is the conference center for the Arabic League, which is really a symbol of the connection between the Arab countries. And I think that they get this common plaza, and it's actually an open library, also because the University of Alexandria, with 70,000 students, are just across the street. And obviously for them to use this building, not only look at it, but use it as a library and a museum and a school, which it is, I think has made this landmark building into a success. And also because it fits in to the Alexandria city. It's a super large project, 90,000 square meters, but it's still not higher than the skyline of Alexandria, 7 floors. So it is possible, I think, to make, we have 7 floors above ground and you have 5 floors underground. I will bring you from this iconic landmark building to another one, this time in Oslo, not in Cairo. This was a competition that we won in 2000, open competition again, and the client wanted a landmark building, so the commission was pretty clear. What I didn't expect to get was also a public plaza as big as the whole site, because Snøhetta turned this project, I don't know if I have the time to tell the story, but I tell it short. The site was bought by the government from the city, and the government was not buying a big site, they bought a small site. So we actually decided to turn the whole site into a plaza while putting the opera house under the site. So when you tilted the site, the complete site, and put the opera house under, you could actually turn the whole site into a public plaza. And it's been a very unexpected success. So there's a lot of people that are actually on the opera house, not in the opera house. And we meant from the beginning that a public building, a public cultural building, should be accessible for everyone, even though if you don't buy a ticket. And I think it's really nice that also the management of the opera house are giving the public outside big screens to look at shows that go inside for people buying tickets. So this house has sort of turned into something very different from what was the intention from the beginning. And I'm just showing you these pictures as I talk, because this is an old-fashioned architectural job, like Alexandra, where the architect is challenged to design everything, the furniture, the lighting, the interiors, everything. Like Alexandria, this house is made together with artists. And the opera house is, you could not walk on the opera house if it was just a building. The reason why you can walk on it is because it's a piece of art. It's not defined by the building code. The whole thing is a piece of art, and that's why you can walk on it. Because it's too steep and it's too dangerous to walk on, especially during winter time, but you can still walk on it during winter time because it's a piece of art. I'm going to show you a short video again. You can use it for many purposes. Choose your just need a crazy Frenchman, so then you can use the building for many purposes. I'm quickly moving to another competition, this time invited competition in Saudi Arabia. This is a cultural building made for Saudi Aramco. And it was a big discussion in the office if it's possible to have the Saudi Arabian king as a client. Knowing the laws of the Saudi Arabian country. But we decided to give it a try. And we had a concept for this competition, the Roman arch, and we explained to the client through the concept, which is this, that we have a diversity in the world, we have a diversity also in Saudi Arabia, and each piece is as important as the other. So we explained that by removing one of these pieces, the whole thing will collapse. And the building is made of this concept. And I think it's actually one of the reasons why we won this competition. And this is just pictures from the competition. And we never thought that they actually was going to make this building. You win a lot of competition without winning the contract, so it's not unusual. But the Saudi Arabians actually decided to build this building. It opened last year, and it's really a landmark building. And I would say thousands of people are going to this building because it's a building for, it sounds very strange for us, of course, both for men and women. So they have theaters, cinemas, restaurants, libraries, which are open for both male and female visitors. And I think being part of that, making this little change is good. But again, we had this discussion about making, a landmark or iconic building in a country like Saudi Arabia. To make this a little difficult, both for ourselves and for the Saudi Arabians, we had a female project manager. It's interesting to say that the Saudi Arabians answered that by having a female project manager too. So very unusual in Saudi Arabia. We had 2 female project managers on both sides. We also had the client representatives, 10 of them in the office for 1 year. They wanted to learn how we work, how we look at things, our discussions. It was very nice, but also very difficult. But I think for us, it was really an important experience. We were criticized really a lot to do this, and I understand why. And also we arranged Edvard Munch art exhibition in this building for the opening. And again, we were criticized enormously for making cooperations with the Saudi Arabians. But I think also to show Edvard Munch's art in this place is important. Not that we are going to change the Saudi Arabian society, but I think it was a step in the right direction. Again, a very large building, and the program is also a little bit sustainable, but not a lot in that direction, which I think is maybe what you can criticize both the Alexandria project and also the Opera House. Today, I don't think buildings like that would be made. I'm going to move to a very different site. Again, a competition. It shouldn't have happened because this site should never have existed. It was a terrorist, as you all know, action in 2001. It's a long time ago, where the Twin Towers was hit and burned down, and also a lot of other buildings around those 2 towers. It opened up a site on Lower Manhattan, and we were given the task to design a huge cultural house, a peace center, and many, many things. And we had to discuss that project with the families that were had lost their loved ones in this site, and they didn't want any buildings there. So, you know, a 30,000 square meters cultural building became an entrance hall for a memorial museum. So this is architecture negotiated from being a landmark building to being a landmark place. And I think it was the right decision, even though the client wanted to do something completely different. I think if you go there today, they did the right thing. They made a memorial park, which is around I'm showing pictures of the entrance hall, which have special functions for the families only. So it's not a landmark building anymore. It's actually a building for families to come and to connect with a place where their loved ones were killed in something very, very awful. And I think sometimes landmark buildings should not be there as it was meant to be. Since this became a very small building, I think also landmark buildings and iconic buildings can be small. It's only why they become this landmark or iconic. Most of them are big or tall. I mean, towers like the Eiffel Tower in Paris have a tendency to become iconic or landmark buildings. I'm going to show you a very small one made by Snøhetta for some years ago, which is just a pavilion, very small pavilion. This is from the process making it, using new technology, from a small robot arm in the Snøhetta office to a large robot arm in a workshop, which made the interior of the view platform. And here you have another landmark. It's the mountain Snøhetta, not the architectural office, but the mountain. And the viewpoint, which is, because it's alone up there, is become a landmark. And it's open, and people can go there. You can stay over, you can put fire on the fireplace, you can bring your family, and you can stay there. Or you can bring the whole office and have a party. That's also possible. You just have to clean up after yourself. But this is also a landmark. So I would like to just continue to talk about the small things which are also landmarks, because also like 10 years ago we designed a stage for the Kongsberg Jazz Festival, and they wanted something to show that they are a jazz festival. They moved their stage from inside to outside. Their main stage was inside a hockey hall, and they didn't feel like it was representative for their actions or functions or concerts or artists. So they wanted something unique in the old plaza of Kongsberg. So they asked us if we could make something which was or could be iconic for them. And the message was, we don't have any money. So we had to design something which shouldn't cost anything. And then, of course, we were helping them with the funding. And we were able to build something which we thought was expressing their sort of core business, having jazz musicians from all over the world coming to this small town in Kongsberg. And it was meant to be temporarily, because this is like a tent. It was there for almost 10 years, I think 7. It was used for 7 years, and then the tent was taken up, stood there for 1 week, and taken down again. But a very strong symbol for the festival itself. And I think it looks very big, but it's under this stage you can take care of approximately 1,000 people and a band, and you can see the band here. I will continue just to I still have time, I think. You have a clock over there, so I have plenty of time. That's very nice. Because I'm moving from the traditional landmark iconic buildings like the Alexandra Library and the Opera House, and also the cultural building in Saudi Arabia, where I think you could say that in many aspects they are successful buildings with successful functions. My question mark is if they are sustainable. The two first of them has received sustainable prices just because they are of very high quality. So they are meant to stay for 300 years. The contractor and in Alexandria we also have an insurance in Lloyd to support that ambition. But I think nowadays it's impossible to not be sustainable in every way. So I'm going to show you a new project that Snøhetta is working on up in Spitsbergen. It seems like not so far from here, but it's quite far up north. And from before, we have a center at Svalbard, keeping all the seeds that we have around the world for future generations. So there's a special archive to keep that. And now they want another visitor center to show all the changes going on, because the changes in the world are happening at the fastest speed up north and in the south. So temperatures are falling a lot quicker, or it's going upwards a lot quicker up north. So while we are talking about 1.5, 2 degrees Central Europe, we are talking 5, 6, maybe 7 degrees up north, and it's big changes. So this center is meant to show these changes on site, and it's meant to be also architecturally wise a symbol for this, and also then iconic and landmark, but not a huge size building. It's not possible to visit yet, but because it's not built. But what you can look at, and this is another way of becoming a landmark. This is one of the first, at least it's the first building, office building in Norway, which are producing more energy than it's using. So this is the new sort of aim for Snøhetta, is to make only these houses, only plus houses that produce more energy than it use, and also have materials which offer as little CO2 emissions as possible. This project was opened just last year, I think, and it's not very advanced. It's shocking, but it's very simple, very easy, not very expensive, and the only source of energy is coming from the sun. And it seems very strange when you look outside here, and it's not so different from Norway. It's very dark and cold at the same time. But if you take the average sun hours in Trondheim, which is in the middle of Norway, you will actually find that this is enough to produce more energy than you need. But then you have to really be careful how you design it. So this is actually a design that follows not form, but follows environment. So here, every piece of solar panels are put in the most critical position to achieve most energy protection. Otherwise, it looks just like an ordinary office building, and it's becoming a landmark in Trondheim just because it's a plus house. Because it really looks just like an ordinary building, but it has received this special iconic landmark title because of what it is. I just want to say that you have to think about the user because if you have the wrong user in a house like this, it's not very effective. So you have to be trained as a user to make this as a plus house. That was one of the discoveries when we started to make buildings like this, is that you really have to focus on the user much more than you normally do in an office building. I will go to something which I showed in my front picture. I don't know if you noticed, but it was a lady serving at tables. And it's this building which has received a lot of attention. I don't know if we can call it a landmark building or an iconic building. This building was produced as at a shipyard and taken to the site, and it's a restaurant. But the first one really put under the sea level. So you have your dinner or your lunch or your breakfast, and you go under the sea. This is the site down south of Norway. If you want to eat there, you have to plan it well, because I think you can eat there next year if you want to be on the list. But it's already received a lot of attention just because it's underground. It's under the sea level, and you sit inside behind this window, and you can look at all the fishes and jellyfish and other creature and the sea just outside, in a very, very rich part of the Norwegian Ocean, because it's really on the south tip of Norway. I also have to admit it's quite expensive, but it's worth a visit. Another project, we are moving to France, and this is not really a landmark building. This is an iconic place, because just after the Second World War, 3-4 boys found, a system of caves with the most incredible paintings ever seen. This is Lascaux in France, where the oldest wall paintings in Europe was discovered by, I think it was 3 young boys, which found an opening to a cave system, which was really, really unique. And then this cave was open for the public, and just in 20 years' time, the cave paintings were more or less destroyed by human breath and by light and by a lot of too many visitors. So some years ago, the French government decided to make a replica. Sounds awful, but they decided to do that. So again, an open competition, and we won the competition, and we made something which was supposed to be hidden, a hidden landmark, because the attention of this site is inside. So we tried to make something which was, should support the feeling of entering a cave. And I'm sure that you have seen pictures of these cave paintings, which are just incredible. So the old cave was 3D scanned, and it was made exactly how it was in the old cave. So it's actually the same experience. And some of the most famous French artists has been part of this project to produce these paintings, and I can really encourage you to visit this place, because it's not only the cave which are made there, but there's also a lot of information, how this is done, from the beginning, and it's really a learning center. And you walk in and out of these different sections of the cave, which we thought in the beginning was going to be a little Walt Disney, but as it is now, I think it has really done its job. As you all know, we have 40% of everything which are built in China. We have won several competitions there among the opera house in Shanghai. And clients, they tend to tell you what they want, and they wanted the Oslo Opera House in Shanghai. We didn't really want to make another opera house, another Oslo Opera House in Shanghai. But as you can see, they were able to get something they wanted. They wanted to walk on the roof. This is not done together with artists, so this is following the building code, and then you get a staircase, not a piece of art. And it's very different. I won't say that it's a bad opera house, but it's very different. And I think here, and it's not only because I'm not been a part of it, you could start criticizing if architecture is going too far. It's not there yet, so it's too early to say. But I think also because this program was made after we know that the climate change is happening so rapidly that we should focus on other things. But again, I leave that question to you. I'm just showing you some pictures of this competition. It took 4 years to get the contract. We won the project and then we competed for the contract for 4 years. But it's signed and it's going to be built in the middle of Shanghai on a fantastic site in a big park, and I'm sure it's going to be beautiful and successful. I would like to start to end my talk by focusing on something which is really, really important for Norwegians, nature. I think, like me and most Norwegians, we have a second home. And the second home is placed up in the mountains or down by the sea. So we spend a lot of time in nature. And we are, for the last 30 years, been making tourist roads projects in Norway. I don't know if anyone of you are familiar with the tourist road projects, but they are all over Norway. And they are small installations made on spots, so you really know that here I can discover something special. And some of those tourist road projects in Norway has been really iconic and landmark, not because of the installation itself, but what you see when you are there. I'm going to show you one project, not from Norway, but a project that has been done in Switzerland. It's the same concept, a very simple, small installation, just to make sure that everyone get the same experience on the same spot, which is just incredible. Of course, you could do this without this installation, but it mark up, you know, where you get the best position to see this panoramic view in a spectacular way. If you go both here and to the other places, I think also it has made many of these sites accessible for a much broader public than, you know, the public which normally are using these places. So it gives you a simple message that things are right before out of your eyes. Sometimes you don't see it anyway. I think for me, for the last, you know, working with students, and students are so occupied with the challenges that are, you know, happening today and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. And Snøhetta has now been criticized a lot by young people because we continue to make these big buildings big buildings, like the Opera House, like the library in Alexandria, like the Opera House in Shanghai, because they represent something which we should stop doing. And I think also because Snøhetta, just, I haven't showed you any pictures of it, made a high-riser in Hong Kong. Why should we spend time on making a high-riser in Hong Kong? So this discussion is also very much present in the office of Snøhetta. And they have decided to do different. But again, I think the solutions are in the cooperation between everyone in the building sector. The client must be on the team, the contractor must be on the team, and of course the architect must be on the team. And I think it's possible, as I have tried to show you, that you can make landmark architecture and iconic buildings and places without and still consider the environment and the sustainable goals of sustainable development goals. So I hope that we will continue to have a much broader discussion about architecture, and I think climate change must be a game changer for architects and property developers and contractors. And at least in my school, we are working really hard to try to cope with the demands of the students in this regard. So, thank you.